I came home late that Thursday, not because I had to, but because I wanted to sit alone in the truck for a while, engine off, just listening to the ticking of the cooling metal. After 25 years of marriage, silence wasn't a stranger. It had just changed shape over time. Less peace, more absence. When I finally walked inside, the house was dark except for the kitchen light. Laura had already left for her training workshop. Something about a company retreat upstate, new protocols, team bonding, corporate jargon. I didn't think much of it until I saw the envelope sitting under my pillow. It wasn't hidden well, like she wanted me to find it, but didn't want to hand it to me face to face. My name was written on it in her handwriting. No honey or Dave, just David. That formality struck a nerve. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened it slowly, like peeling back drywall and finding black mold underneath. The first line wasn't a goodbye. It was a confession. I need space to explore who I really am. This weekend is about more than work. It's about honesty. There's someone I've connected with emotionally, and I've been reading a lot about non-traditional relationships. Please don't see this as betrayal. I'm not leaving you. I'm asking for a chance to grow. It wasn't rage that hit me first. It was the cold, clean snap of betrayal, like stepping on a board that looks solid until it splinters beneath your weight. She used words like growth, exploration, emotional connection. Every word was a scalpel cutting around the truth. She wasn't at a training seminar. She was out trying on another life, seeing how it fit. And she was hoping I'd be decent enough to nod and smile while she dismantled everything we built. But I wasn't raised to play the fool, and I damn sure wasn't going to pretend this was a conversation when the decision had already been made behind my back. I didn't call her, didn't text. I folded the letter and slid it into the glove box of my truck, next to the registration and the Smith & Wesson I hadn't touched in years. That gun had no part in this. But the intention, the quiet readiness, that's where we overlapped. Instead, I picked up our boys, Daniel and Larry, from school early, told the office there was a family emergency, stopped by Sarah's dorm on the way to the cabin and told her to pack light. No one argued. By nightfall, we were 3 hours north, firewood crackling in the old hearth. The kids thought I'd lost my mind when I said we weren't watching TV, not even for the game. But they didn't complain. They could feel it. Something was off. I waited until they were full of grilled cheese and tomato soup before I spoke. Not in anger, not in sorrow, just the way a man delivers bad news when he's already figured out what comes next. "There's something I need to show you," I said, pulling the letter out from my jacket. Sarah read it first. I watched her face harden, then go blank. Larry looked confused. Daniel just stared at the flames like he was trying to solve something bigger than his 15-year-old brain could grasp. "She's not on a business trip," I said flatly. "She's with a man named Pete. I don't know everything yet, but I know enough to stop pretending." Silence. Then Sarah said what I'd been thinking. "She left this like she was doing you a favor." I nodded. "She wanted me to accept it." Smile. "Maybe even thank her for being honest. But I don't deal in half-truths." They asked questions. I answered the ones I could, skipped the ones I couldn't. What mattered wasn't the details. It was the fact that she'd gone behind our backs and tried to package betrayal as growth. Later that night, while the boys played cards, Sarah tapped away on her laptop. She was quiet for a while, then said, "Dad." She didn't go to Lake George. Her plane ticket went to Seattle. And Pete's name showed up on her old LinkedIn likes. Same guy who commented on her anniversary post last year. That post. The one where I stood smiling like a damn fool in front of the lake, arms around a woman who was already halfway out the door. I didn't show them the ache that settled behind my ribs. I just thanked her and walked out onto the porch. Cold air, clear sky. The same stars we'd looked at as newlyweds, when she still kissed me without thinking, and I still believed that love and loyalty were the same thing. I don't know how long I stood there, but when I went back in, Daniel had fallen asleep on the couch. Larry had gone quiet, and Sarah, sharp-eyed, calm, just looked at me and said, "You're not alone in this, Dad." I nodded once. That was all the fuel I needed. The next morning, I made eggs and bacon on the cast iron skillet that hadn't seen daylight since the last 4th of July. I didn't talk much, but I watched. How Sarah kept glancing at her phone, how Larry stayed close to his brother, how Daniel didn't look me in the eye. They were holding their breath, waiting for someone to declare what came next. Once the dishes were done and the fire fed, I called them into the den. The old room with the deer antlers on the wall and the faded leather couch that still carried traces of their childhood. I stood while they sat, not because I needed to look strong, but because sitting felt like weakness right then. "We're not going back until this is straight," I said, voice low but steady. "This family doesn't move forward on lies." Sarah crossed her arms. "So what now? She just comes back and we pretend?" "No," I said plainly. "She doesn't come back to anything unless she earns it." I pulled the white envelope from the coffee table and laid it out like evidence at a trial. "Your mother says she's exploring who she is, says she's not leaving, but wants to open things up with some guy named Pete. She called it emotional honesty. I call it cowardice with a coat of paint." Larry shifted uncomfortably. Daniel finally looked up. "She cheated." I didn't flinch. "Not yet, but she intends to. That's worse in my book. A man can survive a mistake, but planning betrayal, that's character." Sarah nodded slowly. "I found Pete's number tied to a burner app. She used it 3 weeks ago to send him a calendar invite labeled Freedom Weekend." Daniel's mouth twisted. "What the hell is that?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. They were smart enough to fill in the blanks. For the next hour, we laid it all bare. Laura's online behavior, her double talk, the timing of her moods and distance. It was like reverse engineering a crime scene. The kids remembered moments I dismissed. Missed dinners, sudden work trips, cold silences dressed up as exhaustion. At one point, Larry stood and walked out, kicking a pine cone into the yard hard enough to snap the stem off a bush. I let him go. Anger has to find air or it explodes inside. Daniel, usually the quiet one, leaned forward and asked, "What are you gonna do, Dad?" I didn't raise my voice, just told the truth. "I'm not gonna yell. I'm not gonna cry. I'm gonna set the record straight. And if she thinks she's running the show, she's about to find out who she married." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You have a plan?" "Not yet," I said, "but I know where to start. And it begins with all of us understanding one thing: this was never our fault. Whatever happens next, we face it with our heads up and our backs straight." They didn't say anything for a moment. Then Sarah said, "She's gonna lie again when she gets back." I looked at her. "Then we'll be ready." She picked up her laptop, fingers moving fast. "If you want proof, I can track the cloud backups off her old device. I know what to look for. That girl could have gone to law school if she hadn't chased programming." Right then, I was glad for every late night she spent coding instead of clubbing. Daniel spoke up, voice firmer now. "What do you want us to do when she comes back? Be yourselves. Honest. Clear. No fake smiles. If she wants to face this family, she faces all of it." The sun had crept high by then. The cabin, once a place for fishing trips and firecrackers, had become a war room, calm, deliberate, and full of quiet strength. That night, we grilled steaks on the back porch. Nobody said much, but the air was different. Less confusion, more purpose. Larry apologized for blowing up earlier. I told him anger's not the problem. It's what you do with it that counts. Before bed, I pulled Sarah aside. "You okay?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. "I'm not crying over her," she said finally. "I'm just pissed she thought we'd be okay with this." I nodded. "She underestimated you. All of you." Sarah closed her laptop and looked me dead in the eye. "So what's next?" I smiled for the first time that day. "We give her a chance to tell the truth. And if she doesn't?" I paused. "Then she'll learn what silence can do." Laura came back Sunday night, suitcase in hand, makeup fresher than usual, like she was trying to pass for younger. She walked through the front door and gave me a strained smile, the kind of expression you wear when you're selling something nobody's buying. "Hey, honey, I'm back." I didn't rise from the kitchen table, just sipped my coffee and nodded toward the living room, where Sarah, Daniel, and Larry were already sitting in silence. Sit down, I said. We need to talk. She blinked, startled by the presence of the kids. Her hand hovered over the strap of her purse, then dropped. Something in her eyes shifted, nervous now, calculating. What's going on? Sarah stood. You lied. You weren't at a training workshop. Laura froze. I leaned back, calm. We tracked your flight. You went to Seattle, not Lake George. Want to explain that? Her lips parted. I had a connection in Seattle. Stop, I said, not raising my voice. We know about Pete. We know about the burner apps. We know about the hotel reservation under your maiden name. So either you come clean now, or we move forward assuming the worst. Laura's mask cracked, just for a second. Then came the rehearsed lines. I didn't cheat. I didn't do anything physical. It was just a friendship, something emotional I needed. I stood, reached for a manila envelope on the table and slid it across to her. What's this? A choice. You say it was just emotional? Fine. Then take the polygraph. She stared at it like it might bite. I'm not doing this in front of the kids. They deserve to hear it too. I cut in. They're not children anymore. You crossed the line, not them. I didn't do anything wrong. She snapped, suddenly louder. You're being paranoid. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened the calendar invite labeled Freedom Weekend. Daniel crossed his arms. Larry didn't even look at her. Laura opened the envelope slowly. Inside, the appointment for a certified examiner, scheduled for that afternoon. You want to prove you weren't planning to cheat? I said. Then answer one question. She folded her arms. What question? I leaned in. Did you intend to sleep with Pete? The silence was long. Intent? She scoffed. That's not even real. I didn't act on anything. But you planned to, I said. That's what matters. Her gaze flicked from me to the kids, then back to the folder. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. I didn't need shouting. I had facts. I had a presence. And I had something she never expected, self-control. She showed up to the appointment. Maybe out of pride, maybe because she thought she could manipulate the outcome. But when the examiner hooked her up and repeated the single question, did you intend to sleep with Pete? Her answer was clipped. Yes. No hesitation. But her pulse said otherwise. The computer did its job. Laura tried to talk her way out of it on the drive back. You're blowing this out of proportion. I didn't do anything. I kept my eyes on the road. You don't get credit for restraint after packing the suitcase. When we got home, the kids didn't ask how it went. They already knew. Laura retreated to the bedroom, alone. I slept on the couch, not because I had to, but because it felt right. That silence between us had changed again. This time, it wasn't absent. It was judgment. The courthouse smelled like varnish and old paper, like most buildings where people go to lose things they care about. Custody hearing, round one. I walked in wearing my best boots, a pressed shirt, and a trimmed beard. No lawyer at my side. Just a binder under my arm, full of emails, travel receipts, and the polygraph report. I wasn't dressing to impress. I was dressing to be taken seriously. Laura showed up with a sleek-looking attorney in heels and a pearl necklace. She wore soft colors, clasped her hands like she was attending a church service, a mother's performance. I could already see the show forming before we even stepped into the courtroom. The judge, female, wore glasses low on her nose, barely looked in my direction after calling the case. Laura's lawyer launched right in, painting her as a loving mother, a working professional who'd made emotional missteps under pressure from a cold and emotionally distant husband. Her narrative had just enough truth to sound possible and just enough dirt to stick. I didn't interrupt. I took notes, listened, let them fill the air with fog. When it was my turn, I stood up slowly. No lawyer, just me, calloused hands and a calm voice. I'd like to submit Exhibit A, Your Honor, I said, holding up a copy of Laura's letter, the one she left under my pillow. I also have the results of a voluntary polygraph test, emails to a man named Pete, and a record of the false location she gave our children and me while she spent the weekend attempting to start a new relationship. The judge glanced at the papers but didn't say much. Her mouth stayed tight. I knew what that meant. Still, I pressed on. I didn't yell. I didn't raise a hand. I didn't chase her down. I brought my kids together, told them the truth, and gave her the dignity of honesty she never gave me. Laura's attorney objected. Your Honor, this is character assassination. The children were manipulated. I raised my hand. If speaking the truth is manipulation, then we're all guilty. I kept it short. No theatrics. Just read her own words aloud. The sentence where she said she hoped we could be stronger by stepping outside the box. Let her voice convict her. The judge didn't want to hear it. Her questions were softer when they were for Laura, sharper for me. Still, I kept my tone even. I didn't flinch when the judge said she was granting Laura temporary custody pending further review. Sarah flinched. Larry muttered something under his breath. I just nodded once. The fight wasn't over. Hell, it hadn't even begun. I shook the bailiff's hand on the way out. Call it professional courtesy. But outside the courtroom, something shifted. A junior reporter from a local outlet had been sitting in. She caught me before I hit the stairs. You represented yourself? I did. And you're the father? Last I checked. She blinked at the binder in my hand. Do you have a statement? I paused, then gave her the same line I'd been repeating in my head since the letter. Truth doesn't need volume, just patience. She smiled. Mind if I quote you? Be my guest. By the time I got home, the courthouse clip was already circulating online. Just enough heat to start something. I didn't need headlines, just sunlight. Enough of it, and rot starts to dry out in public. That night, the kids and I ordered takeout. Comfort food, burgers and fries. We sat on the porch and watched the sun go down behind the trees. Daniel said, She thinks she won, doesn't she? I nodded. Let her. Sarah pulled up the clip on her phone. You looked like a damn senator up there. I chuckled once. I'm not here to look good. I'm here to win long-term. 2 weeks after court, Laura walked up the driveway wearing a real estate agent smile and a scarf I'd bought her on our 22nd anniversary. She wasn't expecting my truck in front of the house. She thought I'd still be sulking at my brother's place or crashing on a friend's couch. She didn't know I'd been busy. She looked confused. What are you doing here? I didn't answer right away, just nodded toward the gate, where 2 men were unloading a pallet of lumber next to a concrete mixer. They waved. I waved back. You're not supposed to be on this property, she said sharply. You're half right, I said. I'm not on your property, but I own the house. She blinked. What? I pulled a folded deed from my back pocket and handed it to her. You remember that loophole in the land trust? I asked. The one I warned you about 5 years ago, when you insisted we title the land in your name to save on taxes? She didn't answer. I bought the structure. Every board, beam, and screw. Paid a contractor to detach it from the land piece by piece. New legal address, new foundation. The house is mine. She opened the document and scanned it. Her face lost color. You can't just move a house. You'd be surprised what a man can do when he works with his hands for 30 years. I pointed to the new plot down the road, not even a half-mile away. Fenced, prepped, and ready. We start reassembly Monday. You're insane, she whispered. No, I said, stepping closer, my voice like gravel under steel. I'm a man who doesn't let liars sleep in the home he built. She looked around like someone might step in, might agree with her. But the only witnesses were my boys and a few contractors, blue-collar guys who knew the difference between bluff and backbone. Sarah stood on the porch, arms crossed. You should go, she said. You're trespassing. Laura turned to her, stunned. I'm your mother. Not here, you're not. The silence between them was heavier than any shouting match. It landed with the kind of finality that doesn't need punctuation. Laura started to speak, then stopped. She clutched her scarf tighter and walked back to her car, her heels cracking like brittle twigs on the driveway. As her taillights disappeared down the hill, Larry said, That was better than TV. I smiled. We don't need a show. We've got the truth. The kids helped with the move. Not because they had to, but because it meant something. Every screw unscrewed, every beam lifted, it wasn't just labor. It was justice, one plank at a time. That night, we sat in lawn chairs outside the shell of the house, laughing over takeout and jokes we hadn't told in a while. For the first time in months, the air felt clean. Daniel said, "You really bought the house out from under her?" "No," I said. "I reclaimed what she forgot was built on trust. And trust doesn't live in her name anymore." 6 weeks later, we were back in court. This time, it wasn't the cozy local courthouse with soft lighting and sentimental judges. This was federal custody court, stripped of pretense, ruled by timelines and hard facts. I wore the same shirt I'd worn at the first hearing. Not because I couldn't afford another, but because it reminded me who I was. A working man with nothing to hide. The new judge didn't smile. Male. Former Army JAG by the looks of his demeanor. No flowery intros, no fake warmth. Just the facts. I appreciated that. I didn't need sympathy. I needed justice that didn't care how many tears someone could squeeze out on cue. Laura's lawyer walked in first, but her strut had lost its swing. The media coverage from the first hearing had done damage. Quotes from her letter had gone viral. Emotional exploration had become a meme. She wasn't the misunderstood wife anymore. She was the woman who called betrayal growth. I handed my binder to the clerk, neatly tabbed, color-coded, loaded with receipts, emails, text logs, and the polygraph results. I didn't bother to glance at Laura. Her eyes were puffy, but I didn't trust it. She cried too easily when things slipped out of her grip. The judge started asking questions. First to her. "Where were you the weekend in question?" "With a friend. In Seattle." "Male or female friend?" "Male." "Was your husband aware of this?" "No." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Caldwell, were you informed?" "No, sir." She left a letter implying she was at a business seminar. I have a copy in the binder. Tab 3. He found it. Read the first paragraph out loud. His mouth twitched. That was the closest thing I'd seen to emotion on a judge's face in years. Then came the big one. "Who has been the children's primary caregiver over the past 10 years? I answered calmly. "I work early shifts so I can take them to school. I pack their lunches. I coached their teams." She traveled a lot for work. I was home. He looked at the kids' school records. Perfect attendance on my side. Multiple drop-offs, emergency calls, teacher meetings all signed under my name. Laura's lawyer objected once. Claimed I was manipulating perception. The judge cut her off. "Ma'am, perception isn't the issue. Pattern is." Then he asked Laura a final question. "Do you regret your actions?" She blinked. "I regret how it made people feel. But I needed to be true to myself." The judge raised a hand. "That's enough." Verdict came 10 minutes later. Sole custody awarded to me. House. No longer in dispute, since ownership had changed legally. Spousal support. Denied due to proven intent to deceive. Court costs split. But that wasn't the real win. The real win was the hush that followed. The stunned silence as Laura realized no one was clapping for her this time. Her counselor, the one she'd leaned on emotionally during the separation, had quietly submitted notes to the court. Confidential at first, but enough to corroborate my timeline, my claims, and my role. Outside the courtroom, I didn't speak to reporters. I didn't need the spotlight. I spoke to my kids. Sarah cried, but only for a second. "You did it, Dad." "No," I said. "We did it. You stood beside me when it counted." Larry offered me a high five. Daniel wrapped me in a hug so tight it hurt my ribs. I let it hurt. On the way home, I drove past the empty plot where the house once stood. Nothing left but packed dirt and some wildflowers. Fitting. Let nature reclaim what she abandoned. That night, we ate spaghetti and meatballs. Simple, quiet, warm. I poured myself a glass of bourbon and watched my kids laugh around the dinner table. Not perfect, not healed, but free. She asked for dinner like it was a normal thing. Texted me 3 days after the custody ruling. "Can we have one family meal together? Just to talk." I didn't answer right away. I let it sit. Not because I was undecided, but because I wanted her to feel the weight of waiting, of being ignored, something she had handed me too many times without a second thought. Eventually, I said yes, not for her sake, for the kids. She arrived early, makeup subtle, a sweater I hadn't seen in years. She brought a casserole, like she was playing a part in a movie no one else had agreed to star in. The table was set, but the energy was off from the moment she walked in. Larry didn't look up. Daniel nodded once, stiff as plywood. Sarah didn't say a word, just stabbed her salad like it had wronged her. Laura tried to steer the conversation. Asked about school, work, Daniel's football game. No one bit. Eventually, she folded her hands, lowered her voice, and tried to deliver her speech. The one she'd probably rehearsed in the mirror all afternoon. "I know I made mistakes," she began, "and I understand how hurtful everything must have felt. But I want you all to know, I did what I did because I was drowning. I didn't feel seen or appreciated." Sarah cut in, sharp as broken glass. "You didn't feel appreciated? So you lied to Dad and tried to sleep with some guy you met online?" Laura blinked. "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that," Daniel snapped. Larry finally looked up. "You abandoned us. You treated Dad like a placeholder. And now you want applause for showing up with lasagna." Laura's hands shook slightly. "I didn't come for applause. I came to take responsibility." "No, you came to control the narrative," I said calmly. "Just like you always do." She turned to me, eyes glossing over. "You think I planned all this? That I wanted to lose my family?" I looked her dead in the eye. "I think you wanted options. You gambled we'd all still be here when you came back." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The silence at the table wasn't awkward, it was final. After dinner, the kids went upstairs without needing a cue. No hugs, no goodbyes. Laura lingered in the kitchen, fiddling with a napkin. Then, in a voice low and venom-laced, she said, "You think you've won." I dried my hands on a dish towel and looked at her without flinching. "This isn't a game, but if it were, I wouldn't win. You lost." She stepped closer, trying one last play. "You're not the man I married." I let out a quiet breath. "You're right. That man trusted you. I don't." Her mask cracked, finally. The smirk faded. She looked scared. Not of me, but of her own shrinking influence. I was no longer someone she could maneuver. She couldn't shape the conversation anymore. She left without slamming the door. Just a quiet close, like the end of a chapter she never expected me to write. The divorce was quiet. Not because there wasn't ammunition, there was plenty, but because I didn't need fireworks to win. I'd already done the damage with precision. My lawyer, a former Navy legal officer I hired after the first round, called it the cleanest dismantling of a marital empire he'd ever seen. "You came in like a wrecking ball wearing gloves," he said. "Not messy, just surgical." I nodded. I didn't need compliments. I needed closure. The courtroom was half full. No press this time. Just paperwork, signatures, and a notary whose expression never changed. Laura wore black, like she was mourning something. Maybe she thought it made her look serious, or remorseful, or maybe it was just the last play in a long list of failed performances. Her lawyer tried to argue for emotional compensation, said her reputation had suffered, that the media exposure had irreparably damaged her career and standing in the community. My lawyer slid a sealed envelope across the table. Transcripts from her counselor, legally obtained, showing she had discussed the plan for an open relationship months in advance. Proof it wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't a breakdown. It was a campaign. The judge barely glanced up. Request denied. Laura's face didn't move. Maybe she knew it was coming. I had anticipated every angle. The trust accounts I'd set up for the kids had been locked in airtight. Her attempt to reroute one through her own financial advisor failed. The house? Already re-registered in my name. The business credit cards she tried to use post-separation? Frozen. She walked away with nothing I hadn't allowed. But the real victory was something she couldn't control. Daniel refused to attend the hearing. Said it was her mess to sweep. Larry sent her a one-word text. Done. Sarah sat beside me in court, dressed sharp, arms crossed, eyes like her mother's, only colder now. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. After the final stamp hit the page, Laura stood and reached for her purse. I expected a glance, a word, anything. Instead, she turned and walked out like a stranger. It hit me, not with sadness, but clarity. I didn't miss her. I missed the version of her that never existed. Outside, I lit a cigarette for the first time in years. Just one. Let it burn slow as I watched the clouds roll over the courthouse. The war was over. I didn't win by screaming. I didn't win by begging. I won by never stooping to her level. When I got home, I found the last letter she'd mailed before the final hearing, postmarked 2 days earlier. Inside was a handwritten note. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted more. I hope someday we can find peace. There was no "I'm sorry," no accountability, just that same floaty language she used to decorate lies. I folded it once, tucked it into a drawer I'd never open again, and went back outside to finish sanding the porch railing. Hands covered in sawdust. Heart clean. She showed up in early spring. No warning. Just her car pulling into the driveway like it still belonged here. The house looked different now. Fresh paint, new shutters, front porch rebuilt with my own hands. The place had healed faster than she had. I watched from the workshop as she stepped out in heels too delicate for gravel. She carried a bottle of champagne and a gift bag. Her smile looked hopeful. Not fake, just unsure. I met her at the front door. Didn't invite her in. "Hey, Dave," she said softly. "I was just in the area. You drove 2 hours." She winced. "I wanted to see the place. And the kids, if they're here." "They're not." She hesitated, holding the bag forward. "I brought something. It's just champagne. I thought maybe we could talk." I didn't reach for it. "Talk about what?" She licked her lips, searching for words. "About where things are. About what I've learned. About hope." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "I'm not bitter, Laura," I said. "I'm not angry anymore either. But that doesn't mean I forgot." "I know," she said quickly. "I just want a chance to fix things. I know I handled everything wrong. I was selfish, reckless. But I've been going to counseling. Real counseling. Not the echo chamber I had before." I nodded slowly. "Good. But fixing things doesn't mean you get to come back." She looked down at her shoes. "I don't expect to come back. I just hoped I could be in their lives again. Maybe even yours one day." Before I could respond, a car pulled into the drive. Sarah and Daniel stepped out. Sarah's eyes narrowed the second she saw her mother. Laura stood a little straighter. "Hi, sweethearts." Daniel gave a curt nod. Sarah didn't respond. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," Laura said, voice shaking. "For everything. I know I can't undo it, but I'm trying to be better." Sarah walked up to me, ignoring her mother completely. "You good, Dad?" I nodded. "We're just talking." She turned to Laura. "You want to be better? That's on you. But forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a process, and you don't get to rush it just because you're uncomfortable." Laura's eyes filled with tears. "I understand." "No, you don't," Sarah said, stepping past her. "But maybe someday you will." Daniel gave her a look that said all it needed to. "Take care of yourself, Mom," he said simply, then walked inside. Laura turned back to me. "So, is this the end?" I shook my head. "There doesn't have to be an end. But there won't be a shortcut either." She nodded, tears finally falling. "Thank you for not slamming the door." I looked her in the eye, voice calm as ever. "I don't slam doors. I just lock the ones that need to stay closed." She left the champagne on the porch. I let it sit there until the evening rain washed the label off. Then I tossed it in the trash and poured myself a bourbon. Some things aren't meant to be celebrated.